Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 81, and every week we sit down and we have a checklist. Good stories, yep. Looking good on camera, well, you get what you got. And webcams everywhere. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And today is September 13th, 2013.
George, we're going to move on to an important story for story one. There's been a kidnapping in Nigeria. Archbishop Katay, and that's the best we have for his pronunciation, it's Kattey, was kidnapped on a drive home, or he was out driving with his wife last Friday. George, what are the details?
On the evening of September 6th, Archbishop Ignatius Katay and his wife Beatrice were driving to Port Harcourt, which is a town on the coast, Nigeria's southern coast. Archbishop Katay is the Archbishop of the province of the Niger Delta and Bishop of Niger Delta North, and he was headed to a meeting of the Standing Committee of the Church of Nigeria. The police report, Rivers State Police report, at approximately 10:30 in the evening, his car was stopped. We don't know if there was a roadblock or what it was, but the car was pulled over, and gunmen seized the Archbishop and his wife, and they drove the car off into the bush. Now, they abandoned the car and the Archbishop's wife and disappeared into the jungle with the Archbishop. But we don't know who has taken them. And it's been a week now, and no ransom demands have been, that we're aware of, have been made.
Now, this has happened before in Nigeria. There's been bishops kidnapped. This is the first time an archbishop's been kidnapped. I've been in contact with Julian Dobbs, and he says, as of this morning, Friday the 13th, he's still being detained. There's no word if there's negotiations going on or if there's a ransom demand at all. As far as we know, there's not been a demand made, which really goes to who did this. If it was the Boko Haram, the demand would have been on the front page newspaper the next day. They're very good with publicity, but because of the location that this happened in Nigeria, you have to wonder if it's just bandits or maybe it's a political move, George.
Yes, this is a part of the country where, as you've mentioned, 2 Nigerian bishops were kidnapped in this region in 2010 and held for ransom. One was released after 1 day, the other after 3 days. Also, this is where the bandits kidnap overseas oil workers. But it could be politically related. One of the government ministers in the Rivers State, the location where this has taken place, has accused politicians of the opposition of staging the kidnapping to help bring down the state government. Other people are suggesting it's militants of the MEND group who are agitating for independence or autonomy for that region. It could be bandits, it could be Boko Haram, we just don't know. But it is unusual that if it were for money, it's taken this long, because the past kidnappings, this is a well-honed business. 300 foreign oil executives and workers have been kidnapped over the last 5 years. None of them have been killed, and they're all released after a day or two after the cash is paid. That hasn't happened so far.
No. Why are we telling you this? Well, one, so you know. 2, so you can pray. Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury has issued a prayer for Archbishop Katay, and we're posting on Anglican Inc. And right below here is a link to that. If you want to click on the YouTube link, it'll take you right to the prayer. And join us in praying for Archbishop Katay. We understand this is the 21st century. We deal with violence all the time, terrorism. You've been following Anglican Unscripted. You know the Middle East is on fire. Let's pray for a safe return to the ministry and body of this wonderful man. George, story 2. If you're an Episcopalian, and many of you are, and you have an email address, and many of you do because you watch me on the internet with my co-host George talking about Episcopal news, you've received something from SurveyMonkey asking your opinion of the godly attributes the next presiding bishop should have. Many of you probably don't know, but in 2015, Catherine Jefferts Schori is going to retire. It's hard for George and I because she's been a boon to the journalism industry. Anglican TV, Anglican Inc., Anglican RSS, all have taken off because of actions she's taken as part of being the presiding bishop.
She's also been a wonderful bishop for church growth. She really has.
Geez. Yes, she
Look
has.
at, she single-handedly founded the Anglican Church in North America and created one of the fastest-growing denominations in the country. I don't think she meant to do it, but she certainly has achieved a great deal.
She has started her own province. So, you know, George and I really don't want to see her go. But we're looking through some of these questions, and the attributes seem, at first impression, to be godly. What did you see there, George?
Well, they give a list of different things that you would like to see in this person, whether they're a good preacher, interested in social justice ministries, promotes diversity, or are they pastoral? Are they theological? Are they kind? In other words, both doctrinal issues that they were trying to sort of nail down, but not say it. They didn't say you want a liberal or an evangelical, but they list sort of attributes that people attached to those schools of church, plus personal attributes. Do you want another cold fish? Do you want someone with no pastoral skills? Do you want someone who is passive-aggressive and defensive and is a liar? You know, you can click the little buttons.
What's interesting here is the average clergy person has to look at a parish profile. They get a parish profile in the mail. And, I like that. Well, that's a great church. Growing here, great youth ministry, stuff like that. The parish profile of the Episcopal Church is not that desirable at this point. So I don't know. Are you just taking it because it's a promotion, or are you taking it because you can change as the next presiding bishop, George?
And we also have to ask ourselves, Kevin, does this profile, does this survey matter? Does any of this matter? In other words, is this going to be another political job, just like in '97 and in 2006, when
definitely.
internal politics within the House of Bishops determined who the presiding bishop would be? The wider views of the church really don't matter. It's what those men and women in that locked room decide they want at that moment. Because one of the things we forget about 2007 is that the race was between Henry Parsley and Katharine Jefferts Schori, and it was very, very close. And three conservative bishops, and I know this because they told me this immediately after the vote, cast their ballots for Katharine Jefferts Schori. Not because they thought she would be a great presiding bishop, but because they thought she would be a disaster. And after Frank Griswold sort of just, mush along, neither hot nor cold, the issues never quite came to a head, we wanted something to make people stand up and either come or go. And so three conservatives voted for Katharine Jefferts Schori. And guess what her margin of victory was, Kevin?
One or two,
vote.
right? One vote.
One vote.
Yeah.
If those three had voted for Henry Parsley or had not voted, we would have had a different presiding bishop, and how different the church would be. Would there even be an Anglican church in North America?
Well, we needed Katharine Jefferts Schori, as we mentioned before, for ACNA to form. Now, the role of a peacemaker archbishop in the future would make it a harder struggle for ACNA in its international relationships with the Church of England. Now, ACNA is well seated into the global south, the African churches, the Asian churches, but is looking for a seed in the Church of England to get some recognition out of there. Another Frank Griswold or a Browning or something like that may damper something like that.
That's very true, because at the end of the day, the overseas church wants good things to happen for the Episcopal Church. And if you have a presiding bishop who may be very liberal but is modest and humble, in these one-on-one meetings at the primates meeting, that goes a very long way. The damage Katharine Jefferts Schori did at Dar es Salaam, where you and I were there, Kevin, where her personality, and in Alexandria, where she personalized the schisms within the Anglican communion. So not only did the Africans think many American clergy were nuts, they saw in Katharine Jefferts Schori the epitome of all that was wrong. Now, if you had a Frank Griswold, you didn't have that, because Frank was soft and squishy and sweet, and he may be a loon theologically, but he said the right things, and you wanted to like the guy. In the closed-door meetings with the when the primates in Dar es Salaam and in Alexandria, people came out and told us, "Man, I can't stand that witch."
That's not our quote. Somebody else said
Not
that.
our quote. This is how the archbishops describe it. The public quote was Gregory Venables saying, "This is not a Christian as I understand Christians to be." He said that on Anglican TV to you, Kevin.
But when we say, Archbishop said we don't understand, she's crazy, these were liberal archbishops, not just the conservative ones. These are the people who want to get along with the Episcopal Church. Now, I think it's at this point. Okay, finish up.
I just want to say, Kevin, that as a presiding bishop, the presiding bishop really has no day-to-day influence whatsoever on the life of a parish. And frankly, what happens in New York has absolutely no consequence in my little church in Central Florida. We send them money. Actually, we don't send them money, but people send money to them, and you don't get anything back. And you get this woman, the presiding bishop, Catherine Shevard-Shorey, opining on different things, but it has nothing to do with anything. But in these rarefied atmospheres within the church, within the House of Bishops, it makes a great deal of difference. And if Herbert Thompson had been elected in '97 over Frank Griswold, and if Henry Parsley had been elected in 2006 over Catherine Shevard-Shorey, I think we'd have a very different church.
We would. And it's at this point that George and I want to start the re-election campaign for Catherine Shevard-Shorey.
Nine
more years. On to story 3. A lot of you out there in Anglican world read AnglicanInc.com. That's George and I's sister site. We post stories, press releases, everything about Anglicanism that's interesting is on that site. And George and I posted a press release this week from the Carolina bishops, and that's what we're going to call them. It's our new nickname for them. They're the 6 bishops that have kind of melded jurisdictions over the Carolinas. They are Bishop Lawrence, Bishop Wood, Bishop Breedlove, Bishop-elect Bryan, Bishop Gadsden, Bishop Hewitt, and Bishop White. 6 bishops, the Carolinas. And they have a problem. You don't need 6 bishops. You don't need 6 bishops for the Carolinas. And Bishop Lawrence has alluded to this many times in the past. This doesn't look Anglican. What's incredible is they're meeting and discussing this. And Archbishop Duncan, Bishop Murdoch, and Bishop Thad Barnum invited them down to, where did they meet, George? Remember?
A diocesan camp on Johns Island, I believe.
Yeah, and said, let's talk. We're not going to have solutions right away, but let's talk about what's going on and if there's a future. And clearly there's a future. And they put out a nice press release which said what, George?
We're praying, we're talking, and that's really all they said. But again, that they're praying and that they're talking, they realize there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the problems that the initial formation of ACNA had by having what we call affinity dioceses. One bishop, 4,000 miles. And at a certain point, there's a breaking point. And I think that, that we reached the breaking point in the Carolinas where these bishops are like, well, that church is kind of right next door to me. Mind if I oversee it? And, we have these difficulties where there's so many overlapping churches and dioceses in the same geographic location. What's a bishop to do, and how is a bishop to grow his diocese when there's all this mesh going on?
Well, the deeper issue, which the ACNA House of Bishops is beginning to grapple with, is what is a bishop for? In other words, the doctrine of the episcopate. We have bishops who say, I'm a missional bishop. I hate the word missional, but that's another segment. I'm a church planning bishop. I'm an administrator bishop. I'm a sacramental bishop. In other words, there is no common identity. What is the purpose, the point of a bishop? It's not just Anglicans that have this problem either. One of the issues that was left unresolved from Vatican II was, what is the episcopate for? Are bishops junior vice presidents from the under the Home Office in Rome, or what are they? And Anglicanism is trying to redefine itself in the ACNA and in New Zealand and in England and other places grappling with the question, what is a bishop for?
One of the smart things the ACNA has done up to this point is I've been told by sources January 1st, 2014, that's the last you're going to hear of new affinity dioceses. We're shutting that program down, and we're going to really grapple the issue of making dioceses geographical. And we're going to do that by attrition. And folding dioceses into dioceses when people retire, when certain situations arise. And I think you're going to see some of that happening in the Carolinas. Archbishop Duncan has told me, not confidentially, has told me that this is going to take a generation to work out. That this isn't going to be something that happens overnight. And I think there's a realism to that, and I think the bishops that met in the Carolinas here understand there's no quick solution to this. We have a dynamic, growing province, and one of the places growing the fastest is the Carolinas. And yeah, it needs more than one bishop, but it probably doesn't need 6 bishops. We have another issue happening out in the Diocese of Western Anglicans, where their bishop, Bishop Thompson, is set to retire, and they may have an opportunity, they may not know it, where they may want to fold in with San Joaquin, and immediately put that together.
Exactly. You've got 2 dioceses, Western Anglicans and San Joaquin, very similar. They're next to each other. They're both in California. They go from San Diego all the way up through the Central Valley. And if they were able to fold together, it would really be a step forward in sort of getting rid of this un-Anglican tinge that the ACNA has, that its opponents love to beat it over the head with. And here's the first opportunity for this, of retirement coming up and the possibility of melding 2 like institutions together to overcome the problems that we're facing.
Yeah. Interesting to see what happens. I know the best minds are at work on this, and the people who are praying for this, the best of the best. And I think we're going to see a new model unfold. Now, you and I live in a 24-hour information world. It's not going to happen by tomorrow. And keep this in your prayers. Keep Bishop Thompson, who's retiring, in your prayers. And let's just see how this forms out. Patience. George, we're going to move on to some serious news, and it's serious, but the way we're going to report it's not so serious, because in the last 24 hours, this has just become a mush of a story. Background: about 10 days ago, Syria, or I'm sorry, we don't know if it's the rebel or the Syrian army, somebody released chemical weapons, and a lot of people were killed. As of, about 11 a.m. this morning, nobody knows who did it. There's evidence pointing to either side. As of this morning, the international flare of what's going on is just amazing, and George and I will cover that. As of this morning, Christianity is taking a big hit in this country, George.
There are 1 million+ Syrian Christians, and they are targets for both sides. Some of the Syrian rebels are Al-Qaeda linked, and this week, some members of one of the Syrian rebel groups came into a Christian town where they speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus, and they massacred the inhabitants. Not because they supported President Assad, but because they were Christian. And we're seeing tens of thousands of refugees, many of them Christians, fleeing Syria, just as they've had to flee Iraq. And many of these fleeing Christians are Iraqis who are fleeing for a second time. Where they're going to go, I don't know. But because Christianity is in danger of being extirpated by fire and sword in Syria. Now,
that's actually brought response from the Pope, Archbishop Justin Welby, many people who we posted on Anglican Inc. who wear a purple shirt or higher, have put out press releases saying, war isn't the answer here. Don't even try and fool us. There's a pinprick war. There's no such thing. Stop, pray. What did Archbishop Welby have to say?
Archbishop Welby in Parliament about 10 days ago cut the legs out from underneath the Prime Minister David Cameron. He said, look, if you go to war, the victims are going to be the Christians of that region, and you can't have a limited short duration war. You can't kill people to make a political point or a gesture. If you're going to go to war to win, but realize there are going to be consequences. Welby's speech gave conservative backbenchers who really didn't want to go to war under David Cameron the cover to pull out, and so Cameron's call for war was killed. And the French, they're not going to go either, and Congress is not going to go either. And now it's Barack Obama hedging and hawing and trying to get the UN, and finally, who had to bail him out?
Oh, thankfully, we got a letter early this morning from Catherine Jefferts Schori. Here's the picture. Let me set up the scene. Russia has never been stronger in international politics than today. Syria actually has a voice in this conversation. America has never been weaker in international relationships. We don't have a voice anymore. Every strategy Barack Obama put forth to have a limited engagement with Syria has been thwarted by his strategy. So that's the picture that I lay out before I mentioned to you that the Honorable Catherine Jefferts Schori, presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, put out a press release this morning saying, "Attaboy, Barack Obama, we follow you."
Yeah, Presiding Bishop Schori has been silent so far on the Syrian crisis, and finally she speaks, and is to say she backs Barack. She thinks he's doing a great job. Now, you mentioned, Kevin, a lot of people in purple are praying, and one guy wearing a red shirt has been praying, and that's Vladimir Putin. And we reached the point where the Russians, Putin, a KGB thug, has the moral upper hand over the United States. He had an op-ed piece in the New York Times yesterday where he quotes the Pope as the Pope in favor of Putin's way forward. He makes references to God and the Bible, and we should love our neighbor. In other words, Putin is preaching to Barack Obama. We're in bizarro world.
It's yeah. A little advice
but
from
but attaboy Barack. Catherine Jefferts Schori's got your back.
A little advice from the hosts of Anglican Unscripted. If you're going to get in a civil war, you have one choice. Get in there, draw boundary lines, put them on each side. That's your really only choice. Anytime in history somebody's gotten involved in a civil war, it's been prolonged, 10 years, 50,000 dead. That's the way it works. This is a civil war. Don't do it. Let's talk about the real cost. We are likely to see within the next 20 years an eradication of Christians, not just from Syria, but from the Middle East. A lot of these strategies we have as democratic Americans are not going to work long term. And there's not really a lot of protection for those who are minorities when freedom is suggested, entertained, or voted upon in a constitution. So I want you to prepare yourself for post-Christian Middle East unless we can come up with a global strategy on how to deal with tyrants, civil wars, and terrorism. And until that, we're going to have to count that Christian cost.
I will quibble on one point. I would say the Arab world will see the destruction of the Christian culture. Israel has seen an increase in the number of Arab Christians. That's the one safe place. The number of Arab Christians in Israel is growing. That's one of the few, that's the only successful Christian community in the Middle East that's going to be there in the long haul. Are they going to be in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon? It's very hard to say, but will they be in Israel? If Israel's there, yes, they will.
There might be a Christian Russia.
Kevin, this is the most important thing that's happened in England all week.
George, is that on this time?
Yes, Kevin.
Okay.
I can see the
Okay,
monitor.
so-
It says it's on.
You have just witnessed the longest taped show in the history of Anglican Unscripted. This show took 6 days to record. We did our pre-show last Friday. We started recording on Saturday. We did a nice, wonderful episode. George, you were very eloquent and you said stuff that people should have really heard. I, of course, was very entertaining as I normally am. But when you sent me the file, there was one thing missing, George. What was it?
Sound?
Sound. So, one of the greatest episodes of Anglican Unscripted ever was never recorded with sound.
Yeah,
thanks to
Kevin has
George.
been reminding me that this microphone is necessary for the successful outcome of a show.
Okay, so the longest episode of Anglican Unscripted, 81, is in the can. Now, there's a lot changing in the world of news, and one of the laments that George and I have is what used to work 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 60 years ago doesn't work in journalism anymore. Specifically print media. Those journalism sources, papers and magazines that strictly go print are folding and having struggling issues. One of those is the Church of England newspaper, whom you work for as a freelancer. What's going on there, George?
Well, they've cut back on the number of pages. So where I used to have an international section of 4 to 5 pages, it's now down to 1. That's just the economics of the news industry. So I have been putting my efforts, some of my efforts. I still write for the Church of England newspaper. I'm still one of their biggest fans and supporters, but I'm also putting time into other projects.
One of those projects, for the longest time, since the EMEA crisis, we've had a website called AnglicanInc.com. And we really post all the breaking stories. We write original articles. We post other people's press releases. And we've been doing that now for almost 2 years. And the audience has grown to the point where we didn't have time to put into it at one point because of your health issues when you had your surgery. We spent the summer rebuilding AnglicanInc.com. And if you go there, it has a brand new interface, a great way to communicate with other people, to share the articles you like, to see the pictures. And it's a well laid out graphical site with the help of a good friend of mine, James Coder, who he sits in front of his computer all the time and makes things work, and it's a miracle. So we want you to go to the miracle site, check it out, AnglicanInc.com. We're going to try and post, what's your dedicated rate of posting stories there, George?
Well, this week we've been posting from 4 to 7 stories a day. 2, 3, 4, 5 original news items, as well as press statements and releases sent to us from all around the world, from the Archbishop of Cape Town to Catherine Jefferts Schori. She didn't send hers, but we put it up anyway for her.
We found it. Now, one of the things, we have opportunities for people who need to get the message out. We allow advertising here on Anglican Unscripted. There's 3 different segments that you can advertise, and you can also advertise on AnglicanInc.com. If you go to the website, either one, AnglicanTV or Anglican Inc., and click on the Advertise Now button, it'll tell you how to get in contact with us and what you need to give us so you can advertise, specifically fundage. And we'll get the ball rolling, and you can have banner ads like Trinity School for Ministry, the Rejoice. There's a couple different ads going right now on Anglican Inc., and we'd love to add some more video ads to Anglican Unscripted. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and you've been watching episode 81 of Anglican Unscripted.